The arrest, trial, and crucifixion of Jesus Christ is a sorrowful yet hopeful story, central to the Christian faith, detailed in the Gospels of the New Testament. This story begins in the final days of Jesus' ministry on earth, as he sensed his impending death and prepared the hearts of his disciples on the evening before his arrest. Jesus held the Last Supper with his disciples in an upper room in Jerusalem. This was the last meal he used to teach his disciples and establish the Eucharist. At this supper, he broke bread and gave it to the disciples, saying, "This is my body given for you." Then he offered the cup of wine, saying, "This is my blood, the blood of the new covenant, poured out for many for the forgiveness of sins." During this time, he also predicted that one of the disciples would betray him, causing them confusion and sorrow. After the Last Supper, Jesus and his disciples went to the Garden of Gethsemane to pray. He knew that the difficult hour was approaching and needed time to pray and find peace in God the Father. While praying, he felt deep sorrow and tension, to the point that his sweat was like drops of blood falling to the ground. He prayed, "Father, if it is possible, take this cup from me, yet not as I will, but as you will." This shows both Jesus' humanity and divinity, as he was willing to accept God's will despite knowing the pain that awaited him. Immediately after Jesus finished praying, Judas Iscariot, one of the 12 disciples, led a group of soldiers and temple guards to arrest him. Judas had received 30 silver coins to betray Jesus and used a kiss to identify him to those who arrested him. Jesus did not resist, and even when one of his disciples drew a sword to defend him, Jesus intervened and healed the wound of the man who was struck. This demonstrates his peace and compassion even in the most dangerous moments. Jesus was taken to the house of the high priest Caiaphas, where he was tried before the Sanhedrin, a Jewish religious council consisting of priests and elders. They accused him of blasphemy for claiming to be the Son of God and the Messiah. Most of the evidence and testimonies against him were fabricated, and the trial was held at night, violating Jewish law. Despite the unclear and conflicting accusations, Caiaphas finally asked Jesus directly, "Are you the Christ, the Son of the Blessed One?" Jesus replied, "I am." This response was considered sufficient evidence to sentence him to death for blasphemy. In the morning, Jesus was brought before the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate. According to Roman law, the Sanhedrin did not have the authority to impose the death penalty, so they needed Pilate's approval to execute the sentence. Initially, Pilate did not find any reason to condemn Jesus and tried to release him. But under the pressure of the crowd and Jewish leaders, he was forced to concede. To avoid responsibility, Pilate had Jesus flogged and then presented him to the crowd, hoping that the sight of his suffering would elicit sympathy and calls for his release. However, the crowd, incited by the religious leaders, demanded his crucifixion. Faced with the crowd's persistence, Pilate washed his hands before them, stating that he was innocent of this righteous man's blood, and handed Jesus over to them to be crucified. Jesus was brutally scourged by Roman soldiers, who placed a crown of thorns on his head and mocked him as the King of the Jews. Then, he had to carry his cross to Golgotha, the place of execution. On the way, when Jesus was too exhausted to continue carrying the cross, a man named Simon of Cyrene was forced to help him. Finally, they reached Golgotha, where Jesus was crucified alongside two thieves, one on his right and one on his left. While hanging on the cross, Jesus uttered 7 last words, each carrying profound meaning and compassion. He prayed for his executioners, saying, "Father, forgive them, for they do not know what they are doing." He also promised the repentant thief, "Today, you will be with me in paradise." Jesus endured agony on the cross for 3 hours. When he breathed his last, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom, symbolizing the end of the Old Covenant and the beginning of the New Covenant between God and humanity. The earth shook, tombs opened, and many dead people were raised to life, which astonished the Roman soldiers. And a centurion exclaimed, "Surely this man was the Son of God." After Jesus' death, Joseph of Arimathea, a wealthy man and a member of the Sanhedrin, asked Pilate for permission to bury him in his new tomb. Pilate agreed, and Joseph, along with Nicodemus, another Jewish leader, took Jesus' body down from the cross, wrapped it in linen, and placed it in the rock-hewn tomb, sealing it with a large stone. 3 days later, early on Sunday morning, several women went to the tomb to anoint Jesus' body with spices, but they found the tomb empty and the stone rolled away. An angel appeared and announced that Jesus had risen from the dead. Jesus' resurrection is the ultimate proof of his divinity and the foundation of Christian faith, affirming that death could not hold him and that he truly is the Savior. Jesus appeared to his disciples and many others after his resurrection, proving that he had conquered death and brought new hope to humanity. This event is not only a part of religious history, but also a symbol of love, forgiveness, and salvation that God offers to mankind.